my mom opened a can of salmon, boiled up some minute rice, stirred it all together in her electric skillet with a pinch of salt. And as a kid, I loved salmon and rice, a simple dish, and I asked Mom, could we have it more often? And she gave me a funny look and said, no, Susie, it's just for special occasions. Well, I pondered that and announced that I was going to have salmon and rice for my birthday dinner. No, Susie, she said, not that kind of occasion. Well, I'll explain it when you're older. And you know, I was a curious kid and I heard that a lot, so I let it drop. Now, Monday to Friday, my mom cooked dinner, but on the weekends, Dad took over in the kitchen. And he was a very good cook. He had worked his way through college and then law school as a short order cook in a busy diner. But then, in his next to last semester of law school, he dropped out. He took an exit off that highway he was on because Japan bombed Pearl Harbor and the U.S. entered World War II, and he enlisted in the Navy. Now, he wanted to be in naval intelligence and be a spy, but the recruiter looked at his application, and it says here, you've worked as a cook? Yes, sir. Well, the Navy needs cooks. And so he shipped out to Kodiak Island in the Aleutian Chain off of Alaska as a cook second class in the Navy Seabees. Now, to this day, there is a military base on Kodiak, but during World War II, it was huge. As many as 15,000 people stationed there. There was a shipyard and an airstrip and a hospital, and every one of those people had to eat 3 times a day. You've probably heard Napoleon's famous quotation, "An army marches on its stomach." And it's true, and the cooks worked really hard. Now, because it was an island, and because it was largely undeveloped, all of the supplies and all of the food had to arrive by ship, which was not a problem until the time the ship didn't come. And they panicked in the kitchen because they were running low on everything: meat, eggs, potatoes, vegetables, fruit, dairy. Well, there was one thing they had a lot of: rice. They had sacks and sacks of rice, thanks to some military snafu, piled to the ceiling of the warehouse, but not much else. But they also had a little luck, because it was the season when the salmon were running. And every river and stream that flowed down from the hills of Kodiak to the ocean was filled bank to bank with glistening fish struggling upstream to their ancestral spawning grounds. And every man who could be spared from the kitchen crew went out to stand for hours in that icy water, hauling in net after net after net of salmon. And then every one of those fish had to be gutted and filleted. And so the men on Kodiak Island did not go hungry. They had salmon and rice for dinner, and salmon and rice for lunch, and even some salmon and rice for breakfast until the next supply ship got through. And by the end of that time, nobody, especially the cooks, ever wanted to see salmon again. Now, those are the kinds of stories my dad told me about the war. I had friends whose fathers served, and they would not talk about it. But Dad, he wasn't at the front. He never saw combat. He loved his time in Alaska. He used to tell my sisters and me stories about, well, like the shortest night of the year up there so far north, when he and his buddies climbed a mountain at sunset, watched the sun drop in the west, smoked one cigarette, and turned around to see it come up in the east. And he frightened us with stories about the big brown bears that are native to Kodiak Island that would wander onto the base. And he talked with so much longing and so much love about the beauty of the coast, of the ocean and the rivers, the majesty of the mountains and the deep silence of the forest. And then the war ended. And he went back to Ann Arbor and finished his law degree and married Mom, and they moved back to their hometown, and they had 3 kids in 5 years. And life was pretty good. But every now and then, when dealing with clients all day got on his nerves. And when trying to find his place as an adult in his hometown just seemed like a struggle. And he had a wife and 3 kids to support. And when he'd had too many beers, we would hear him muttering to himself, "How did this happen? How did I get here? How did I get stuck in this lane? There's got to be an exit. You know, the Navy was good to me. God, I loved Alaska. I ought to re-enlist." And that's when salmon and rice appeared on the dinner table. "Oh, geez," my dad said, and then he'd look over and my mom would be grinning. And he'd look at us kids and he'd start to grin. And pretty soon everybody's laughing. The whole family is laughing, though I didn't understand why. But Mom was right. When I got older, it made sense to me. I understood how a plate of salmon and rice could speak louder than any words. And I knew that when my dad looked at that on the dinner table, he realized life in Alaska wasn't perfect. And when he looked up at his wife and his kids, he must have been thinking, right here, right now, this is pretty good. Thank you.